On today's episode of the MilCom Founders Podcast, we'll meet Laura Yang Renner, a former Air Force officer who has built a bridge between military spouses and small business owners. Laura is the founder of Freedom Makers Virtual Services, which she created in 2015 after recognizing a perfect match: small business owners who need help but aren't ready for employees, and military spouses seeking meaningful work opportunities that can move with them. Freedom Makers connects military spouses with small businesses to provide virtual services ranging from administrative support and social media management to bookkeeping and project coordination. Her company operates without contracts or minimum hour requirements, making it accessible for businesses at any stage. Drawing from her Air Force experience, Laura saw the untapped potential in military spouses, a diverse group of professionals who bring unique skills and perspectives to the businesses they support. We're looking forward to hearing about Laura's journey from military service to creating opportunities for both military families and small business owners.
Welcome to the MilCom Founders Podcast, where we champion and celebrate military community business founders. In each episode, we will talk with a MilCom business founder to learn how they work through various obstacles and opportunities in business and in life. I'm your host, Rod Loches. Let's meet today's guest. Hey, welcome to the MilCom Founders Forum podcast. I'm your host, Rod Loches. Today, we have the opportunity to champion and celebrate Laura Yang Renner. She's an Air Force veteran and the founder and managing director of Freedom Makers Virtual Services. Laura, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Rod. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Always an important question to ask you. Where are you today? What part of the world?
I'm in the Sierra Mountains of California, just outside of Yosemite.
Very cool. Very cool. Are you elevated? Are you?
About 3,000 feet up, not too high. Coming from Colorado, it's not too high, right?
That's right. That's right. And if you're from San Antonio, it's pretty high. That's for sure.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Laura, I always say it's best to know people, and we do business with people we know and like. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm an Army brat. I come from a military family. My we were talking before the show started. My grandfather was also in World War II, and then my father did 25 years. He was 3 years as a Marine in Vietnam, and then 22 years in the Army. And
Wow.
so I grew up as an Army brat. And my brother and I both went Air Force. And so, and my brother's coming up on 24 years. Is that right? Or 21 years, sorry, in the Air Force. I did 6 full time, got out for 12, and went back into the reserve. So I've been in the reserve now for a little over 6 years. And that's my military background. When I got out of active duty, I went straight to business school because I knew I wanted to go into business, but I knew nothing about business. So I thought, let me just go straight to school.
Wow, very cool.
A bit naive in that regard, but I don't regret it at all. It was I loved it and I learned a lot.
Oh, that's fantastic. So when you're not working, what are you passionate about? What drives you that you work to do X?
Yeah. I love trying new things. So I travel full time so that I can get to experience new places. And I call myself a PG-13 adventurer because I like to do the adventurous things, but I don't do them to the extreme. So, I snowboard and I scuba dive, and I like to try new things, but I'm not like the extreme. I'm not going to be on a Red Bull commercial anytime soon.
Okay. Yeah. Now you said you like to travel all the time. Can you clarify that? I mean,
Yes,
you travel
so
all the time, right?
yeah, I've been traveling full time for almost 2 years now. But even prior to that, I traveled a lot. I think that was growing up military. I think that's just what I got used to and what I loved.
That's true.
And so then it's hard for me to stay still.
Yeah.
The longest I've lived anywhere my entire life in one sitting is 8 years, and that felt like it was too long for me.
Cute. Understood. Understood. Absolutely. And what's a personal challenge that you've overcome that you think other people, other military community founders might appreciate or learn from that you've had?
I feel like having come from the background that I have, there's sort of this expectation around what I'm supposed to achieve or accomplish, and it really not even my background, anyone, right? You're supposed to get a good paying job and have a house and a nice car and things like that. And
Hmm.
so what I've really learned and worked on with myself was figuring out who I really want to be and defining that for myself and building my business and my life around that instead of the other way around or waiting until
Yeah.
I retire to get to do what I want to do. Instead, trying to live a full life now rather than waiting um, to be who I want to be. And I think, that came up. I grew up in a very strict household where I didn't really get to explore um, all sides of me kind of thing. And then I went to the Air Force Academy and I went to the military where you don't necessarily get to explore all sides of yourself. And so it wasn't until I started a business that I started pursuing that. And
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of freedom in that. There's a lot of fear in that too, but there's a lot of freedom in
Yeah.
that. And so that's probably something I would advise others is take that time to learn about yourself and figure out what drives you and what motivates you and design your business and your life around that.
Boy, that's a great insight. I think to me, what I just wrote down was live your life on your own terms
Yes,
and incorporate business into your life, not your life into your business.
right.
Man, that is a golden nugget right there. So thank you for sharing that. Great insights. Um, as you run your business and enjoy your travels, what do you do? And I think you've already kind of alluded to it, but what do you do to take care of yourself? What's something that's important to you that you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah, the past couple years I've been setting goals at the beginning of the year. They're not, the whole SMART goals or anything. They're just stuff I want to focus on. And I have an accountability partner and we meet weekly. So we'll go over our annual goals, then we'll break them down to what we want to focus on that month, and then based on that, what we want to focus on that week. And last year, my goal was to focus on sleep. And that was really helpful for me, especially with traveling. Like maybe don't book a flight where you land at 2 a.m. and then schedule a 6 a.m. meeting, right? And so just taking that time to actually sit down and say, okay, I need to focus on sleep. This
Hmm.
year, my focus has been on fitness, especially with travel. How do you incorporate fitness when your access to gym equipment varies based on where you are? And so that's been really helpful. And then the third thing that's just kind of, I think my mantra in life in general is always be learning. And I'm just
Uh-huh.
always trying to learn about myself, about leadership, about business. I like to read. I know other people like to do podcasts. I like to talk to people. And so even just learning about myself, like I call them life hacks, knowing that I
Uh-huh.
need enough sleep or whatnot. Or as an example, for fitness, I know that I need accountability. If I just tell myself to go to the gym, I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
So the app I use is all about accountability, right? And so that learning about myself, but also learning about leadership and business and things like that, I think is really helpful. To living life on your own terms, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What's that show called? South Park. There's an episode in South Park and it talks about an accountability buddy. Um, and and that's what you've got. It sounds like you have an accountability buddy that you and your friend keep each other accountable. I think that's fantastic. Do you have a format that you guys follow, or is it ad lib, ad
Um,
hoc?
Yeah, it's a loose format, I should say. We have a set time that we meet every week, and we start off with each person sharing how their week went. And that is open. That can, and some we block an hour, but if neither one of us has something after, sometimes it's 45 minutes, sometimes it's 2 hours, it just depends. And then after that, we start with, she does it on her computer. I have my notebook, and we go and look at what our annual goals are. And we say, if am I in progress on these? Then we go look at our monthly goals and we say, have we worked on those? And then we go to our weekly goals and we share, did we work on those? And then we set our goals for the next week. So in some ways, it's like if she doesn't do her goals, I'm not like, you got to do your goals. It's just more saying them out loud to someone else
Yeah.
helps ourselves hold ourselves accountable. And like with me, I find that I actually will write them out and put them on my desk. So I see them during the week to make sure that I'm working on them throughout the week. So
I love it. I love it. It's I've had accountability buddies through the years, and my accountability buddy recently, we met almost every week. He recently relocated to outside the area, and I've missed that. I've never thought about it like you said it, but that's the kind of relationship and conversation we often had. But now, thank you, Laura. I'm going to be looking for my next accountability buddy. And maybe I call them up and say, hey, let's do it virtually now. So we'll see how that
right.
works out. So thank you.
Yeah, we started doing it in person. We would meet at a coffee shop that was halfway between our homes, and because we both worked from home. And then
Yeah,
once I moved away, we started doing it virtually.
awesome. That's really cool. So your time in the military, why did you join the military? What was, how did that come about?
It wasn't anything. It was partly because it was all I knew. My mom worked at AFES too. Like we were
Wow.
a, a true military family. Ironically, with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, my mom was the first one to deploy. She went with AFES to Iraq before, I've never deployed, but even before my brother went, she was the first one in the family to deploy over there. But anyway, so
Amazing.
in
Yeah.
some ways, it was really all I knew. And to be honest, it was an opportunity for free, college. And so that
Mhm.
was a big part too. And I kind of just didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated. So in some ways it was, a guaranteed job with free education and something I was familiar with.
Yeah. And you went into the Air Force Academy, right?
I did, yes.
Wow. That's very cool. Thank you so much. And in the military, what did you do in the Air Force?
I started off as a public affairs officer. Um,
Okay.
and that was important to me back then because, this was the early 2000s. I think the military and the media were still learning to trust each other again after Vietnam,
Uh-huh.
like back then,
Yeah.
right? And so to me, that was really important to be able to share the story with the American people, and in a way that was not happening then. And then since I've gone back in, that relationship has really changed. It's really transformed. And also, I've changed where being a business owner, I am also very much focused on operations and focused on how are we making this
Mhm.
run? How are we taking care of our people? That kind of thing. So now I'm in personnel in the reserve, and that's a fit for me now as well because that's very people focused and people are the mission, right? Or people what drive the mission, and for
That's right.
a force support officer, people are the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you're in the military, what's a learning or two from the military that you now use in business? You often are like, hey, what's some of those core principles or things like that?
Yeah, I think the timing of this is so perfect because even just a few weeks ago, I probably would have answered this question completely differently, or I would have struggled to answer this question. I think um, as veterans, when we go into business, we don't necessarily see ourselves as unique because we all went through the same training and we went through roughly the same experiences, right? So it's like we're not that special kind of thing, but to someone who hasn't been in the military, it's very different, you know.
Right.
And I remember, you know, my second business. Oftentimes in the circles I was in, I was the only veteran, and people are like, "You need to talk about this all the time," and I'd be like, "But it has nothing to do with my business." They're like, "It doesn't matter. You need to talk about it," and I just didn't understand that why that was unique or whatnot. But um, in recently, when I was giving a presentation, that one of the things I realized is the military very much focuses on training. You know, they don't care what your background is, right? They will train you from the ground up. You know, recently I was talking to a high school senior who already has his private pilot's license, and he was wanting to fly for the Navy, and
Uh-huh.
he thought that that would give him a leg up. And I was kind of like, the Navy doesn't care. You're going to start on day one, just like everyone else, right? And so in some ways that makes it very easy to work with people
Mhm.
because you know what kind of training they've had, you know what kind of based on their level of rank or whatnot, you know what roughly what job experience they have, that kind of thing. Um, so for as complicated as the military is, they have really focused on training. The other piece is around rules of engagement. You know exactly what you need to do to get promoted. You know exactly what you need to do to pass inspections. All of that, for as complicated as the military or as complex as the military is, all that is very clear. And what I realized when I transitioned to business is that may not be clear based on industry, and even companies within industries, they maybe won't tell you how you get promoted or what kind of training you need to do or what is expected to be considered a good performer. They may or may not tell you that. If they do tell you that, they may or may not train you on how to do that.
Right.
So I think that becomes ingrained in us as military veterans that we don't really see as unique, right? And so at Freedom Makers, we have ROEs down to things like what you can post in chat versus what you should post in our task management. Like if you're going to task someone, it needs to go in task management.
That's right.
You can let them know about it in chat, but don't task them in chat, right? Like we have rules of engagement, even on Zoom, how
Yeah.
to we were in a meeting with a vendor, and she was like, "Oh, all of you are raising your hands with questions, during a demo, because that's our ROEs on how we communicate on Zoom." And so I think that's something that I brought from the military without realizing that I did. And in fact, it was only in the last few weeks that I realized that we did that. So for
Love that.
yeah, so no matter how small you are or how big you are, you can define the rules of engagement in your company, and then that can last as you grow, right? And that comes from, I think, from the military.
Hmm. Absolutely. I was a combat engineer, and the one I always remember is, well, many, but one of them is being a force multiplier. The whole engineer's job was to be a force multiplier. How do you shape the battlefield? How do you accelerate the troops across the river? Whatever the case is. And we were supposed to be a force multiplier to allow one battalion to protect more area or take more area faster, better, and all that. So, and so often, like rules of engagement, that's a brilliant reminder to everybody in the community and beyond on how to do that. That's really cool. The and the trust, building that trust. I remember showing up to OBC, Officers Basic course, and the guy next to me goes, "Dude, I don't have any money." Well, they had forgot to give him his upfront pay or whatever, and so here I am, Chico Mediavilla from Puerto Rico. I gave him enough money to pay for his BOQ and uh, be able to get meals for the next week because I knew, and there was immediate trust with having
Yes,
just met that guy 5 minutes ago. And
right.
guess what? I got paid back, and I got a couple extra beers out of it too. So that was pretty cool. That's for
Yes,
sure. So that trust is so important. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So what's a great story from your time in the military when you were in the Air Force? that might inspire others or help them succeed in business or life? Something that you did.
Well, my first thought takes me back to basic training, where there were just so many times. I think and not even basic training, I think even my 4 degree year or freshman year for the non-academy grads, but where they purposely try to push you beyond what you think you are capable of. And I remember there were 2 times specifically where I was so surprised at how far I got. One was a rope climb, and one was at the academy at the Air Force. You have to jump off a 10-meter into the water, and you're supposed to stay under and swim under the first bulkhead, which I don't remember how far away the first bulkhead was, but it's probably a third of the pool or whatnot. And simulating like jumping out of an aircraft and swimming
Sure.
under the burning oil or whatnot. And so in order to pass, you had to jump. But they wanted you to swim under the first bulkhead, but you could come up before the first bulkhead and still pass, right? And I just believed I could not make it to the first bulkhead. And I was not afraid of jumping, but I just didn't believe I could make it under the bulkhead. And I swam and I came up right in front of the bulkhead. And I thought, man, I could have made it. And so it just, and then the rope climb, getting higher than I thought I could. It was those 2 things that stuck out to me around you can always do more than you think you can. And it's your brain that gets in the way, right? So if you just keep swimming, and just keep going, and I think I remember reading that's a quote by a Navy SEAL, like when you think you can't go anymore, your body's only something like 70% used up or something, right? So like you can always go further than you think you can. And I think and that's not just physical too, it's any kind of stress or work or whatnot, you always can go more than you think you can. So when you're scared or when you don't believe in yourself, just take action, keep going, and you'll surprise yourself. And so I think that's something I took away from something I learned from the military.
Absolutely. That's another great learning. So here we are talking about business finally. And tell us about your business.
So we help solopreneurs and small teams who are often overwhelmed by the idea of finding flexible talent they can trust, going back to that trust piece. And we help them by matching them with a skilled military spouse as their remote team member, and basically doing admin support from wherever they're stationed. And no matter when or where they move, they can continue supporting their clients remotely.
Yeah, fantastic. And you work exclusively with military spouses?
We have some veterans and retirees as well, and some veteran spouses and retiree spouses as well. We even have had a couple active duty join us, but I think they don't. Their availability is always quite limited. Yeah,
that's right. Well, and just a note, and I have to say it now, that logo behind you, Freedom Makers, is fantastic. So I imagine one of your team members made that.
Our first one was made by a team member. This one was made by a veteran-owned company.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's perfect. So
thank you.
And when I look at your LinkedIn page over here, you worked at some language schools. It looks like maybe in Beijing. It's kind of an offshoot, but I found that so interesting. I wanted to hear, you went from there to AAR, actually in HR management, and then Boo Boo Books.
Yes.
Did I say it right?
Yes.
So tell me about that journey before we talk about more about Freedom Makers. That's an interesting journey.
Yeah. So while I was in the Air Force, I started getting trained to be a foreign area officer focusing on East Asia. So that's where I had learned Mandarin. And then I ended up getting out and going to business school. And so I did an international MBA, and that included an exchange at Peking University. And from there, I finagled my way into an internship with an entrepreneur or a small business in Beijing. And so that was that language school. And
Got it.
so I like to joke that I have a knack for learning languages, but I also have a knack for forgetting them. And so
Hmm.
so I worked at that school for the summer. And that's where I really got my first exposure to small business and how you can make it work with limited resources and a vision and just a vision and grit. With you can make a small business work, right? And and in that case, it was a multicultural workforce. The founder was German, the manager was American, and the employees were Chinese. And then the instructors, depending on what language they were teaching, could have been from various countries. So that's where I got my um, first exposure to small business, and that's what I wanted. I went to business school with the intent to start a business. So I started Boo Boo Books, which was a dual language children's bookstore. Um, and it was online, but it was before online was really a thing. And it was
Yeah.
before I really knew what I was doing. So I say it failed for the right reasons. I built a website and took a nap. Basically, it was like waiting for people to come, and they never really did, kind of thing. And then um, a previous commander who had become a mentor was working at AAR, and he called me up and wanted, and, offered me to come work for him again. And he's one of those guys that when he calls, you answer and you say yes, right?
That's right.
And so that's where I really learned about HR and learned about kind of still small business. Like it was probably more like a medium-sized business. And so learned about, how they operate. It was a medium-sized business within a large corporation. And
Hmm.
so learning more sort of sophisticated business processes, but also knowing that they're making it up as they go along too, in some ways, right? And so then that
Absolutely.
um, where I was able to take some of those experiences and to inform where I went next with uh, my next business.
Got it. And then why are you the one that uniquely was in a position to start and scale Freedom Makers? How did that come about? How did that happen?
Yeah. So after I left AAR, I actually started a uh, it was supposed to be a consulting business that helped small, medium-sized businesses develop their recruiting process. And my first client was like, "That's great. Can you just hire me someone?" So it became a recruiting business.
Uh-huh.
And I discovered I don't actually enjoy recruiting. I like designing a process, designing a system, running it, but actually doing the service I didn't enjoy. And, they say starting a business is hard. I thought that's why I was miserable, because starting a business was hard. Over time, I realized it's supposed to be a good hard, like going to the gym, a good workout,
Hmm.
hard, not a misery. And so I was in doing that for about 2 years. And during that time, I was meeting a lot of solopreneurs and small teams who needed support, but they weren't ready to hire an employee.
Hmm.
Our average client, a client uses us on average for 5 hours a week. That's
That's
really
that's
hard to hire an
mhm.
employee for that much time, right? So um, they needed help, but they didn't need an employee dedicated solely to them. And meanwhile, my brother was getting ready to move again. I was having that conversation with my sister-in-law that I'd had multiple times before about what she was going to do for work. I remember my mom going through that, colleague spouses going through that. And so that's what made me think about, this untapped resource on the military spouse side and this unmet need on the solopreneur and sort of micro business or small team side. But meanwhile, a big part of what drives me is this concept of personal freedom, going back to living life on your own terms. I never want to feel trapped. that's my own personal thing. And it came from, there were a couple of times where my mom worked in toxic environments, and I would, she's an immigrant. English was her second language. So as a kid, I was the one helping her draft her EEO complaints, that kind of thing. And so I remember once asking her, why don't you just leave? And she said, I need the health insurance. And so she was stuck in this miserable environment because she was trapped in it, right? And so that's part of what really drives me, is I never want to feel like I can't do something I want to do, or that I can't leave an unhealthy environment because I need something from it. And so that is a big part of our guiding principle, is freedom. The whole thing is designed around what provides the most flexibility to the most people. So for clients, we don't have a minimum hour requirement. We don't sell packages. Clients can use us for as little as 1 hour a week, or 1 hour a month, or whatever. Or, a great example I like to use is CPAs. They will burn through their hours during tax season and then chill during non-tax season. And we're okay with that, right? And so on the spouse side, it was very important that we don't assign work, that they get to choose the work they want to do. And so when a client says, hey, this is the kind of support I'm looking for, we share it with our community. The ones who say, hey, I'm available and I'm interested and I'm qualified to do this kind of work, those are the only ones we consider matching with that client, because we're never going to force someone to do something they don't want to do. So if for back when we were smaller, there might be times where we only had one freedom maker qualified to do a certain thing that a client asked. And if that client said, no, I'm not interested, I'm not available, we went back to the client and said, sorry, we don't have anyone for you, because that was a big deal for us to honor the freedom on the military spouse side. So, and then for me, I work remotely, I can travel, right? So that's, I think that's a big part of how what I bring that makes it unique, is that whole freedom. Freedom is a guiding principle for the company, and we design everything to be as flexible as possible.
No, absolutely. When I look at the name over your shoulder, that's exactly what you're doing. Is you are providing that freedom to the clients. Well, you really have two clients. You have the clients that hire you, and you have the clients that get paid by your other clients. So that's pretty cool.
Yes.
And what is your ideal client? I think you said it's the solopreneur, the small professional shops and things like that need X, Y, and Z. Yes. Okay.
Yes. We look for the small professional shops. I always say that they're at least systems oriented. They don't have to have systems in place, but if they can at least think, okay, I'd like step 1, step 2, step 3, even if it's in their head, that helps them let that go to their freedom maker. And then I always say that they're tech comfortable. They don't have to be tech savvy, but they, believe it or not, we've had clients who don't know how to get on Google Drive or something like that. And it's kind of difficult to work with a remote person if you're not
that's right,
comfortable with technology. And then on the freedom maker side, what we have found are ones who, it's not like what we have found is the ones who thrive with us are the ones who want that freedom to, I can work a few hours here, a few hours there. I like to do a little bit of everything, sort of the jack of all trades type person, because that's what a solopreneur needs. They don't need, someone who knows one specific thing at depth. They need someone who knows a little bit of everything. So we have found that those are the ones who thrive with us, who can handle multiple clients, can handle a little bit of this, a little bit of that. They like that. One thing I've noticed with military spouses, regardless of work experience, skills, education, what they all can do is organize, research, and adapt. And that's usually what solopreneurs need. And so, but the ones who are really good at that, or who, like I said, they like to do a little bit of everything, are the ones who thrive as a freedom maker.
That makes sense. That they're ready to dig in, and the old saying I have is adapt, improvise, and overcome. And
yes,
as a mil spouse, they have to do that all the time.
Absolutely.
I can't even imagine.
Absolutely. So, I know, it blows me away. We were just talking about how the military trains everything they need the service member to do. And there's not really any training for spouses, right? They have to figure it out on their own, and it just blows me away, their ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had some great success with a number of fantastic team members over the years that are mill spouses, and just that again, that level of instant trust, that insights, that comfort, and that shared understanding of values are all there
Yes,
from day one.
yes,
And even I think even the way we work together, communicate, there's a certain thing, you know,
yes.
that we have a baseline understanding, except unless an Air Force person talks, then we get confused, but no, but hey, I even know what kavu means now. So it's really cool, that's for sure. I think I know how you're going to answer this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. How do you measure success?
Yeah, you know, see, now I feel like I have pressure to answer the way but I, it, I think the first step is defining what success is, right? And but for us, even at Freedom Makers, we just celebrated our 10th birthday,
Wow,
and we
congratulations.
didn't, thank you, we didn't figure out how to measure success until probably year 8. Um, for us, it was just, are we continuing to grow? And that's what we looked at.
Uh-huh.
And part of it is because we do feel like we do things differently. So we're not going to measure just on hours purchased or hours worked or revenue. We're more on that mission impact. So how do we measure that impact? And so that's, but what I've learned is that's okay. Take your time to figure out how you define success, and then once you have that, take your time to figure out how to measure it in a way that
Hmm.
makes sense, because it's not just about the dollar, right? And so for us, we measure it on how many, we call them assignments. When a freedom maker and a client is matched, we call that an
Hmm.
assignment. So how many assignments we have, how frequently are they working together, and how long are they staying together. So those are how we measure it. And then because if those three are within our goals, then everything else takes care of itself, right? As far
Yep.
as revenue or profit or whatnot. And so that's how we measure success in the company. Me personally, it's um, am I happy, or do I feel fulfilled? I think that's how I measure success. And
Got it.
kind of, I think too, though, my happiness and my fulfillment comes from, do I feel I'm making an impact? And so that's, and part of that is, are we constantly making improvements? Are we constantly learning as a company and trying to do better by our freedom makers and by our clients? And so, we have an ethos, and are we honoring and living up to our ethos? And when I feel like we're doing all those things, then I feel that fulfillment, and that, kind of that sense of pride that, wow, I've
Hmm.
built this, and I didn't build it
Yeah,
alone, but like, wow, this didn't exist 10 years ago. And here we
that's
are
right.
impacting, hundreds of spouses and hundreds of small businesses.
And
And,
truly
and
giving more
that,
freedom to all your stakeholders
yes.
is how I thought you'd say it is, hey, how much
Yeah.
freedom am I bringing that people get to live life on their terms, and
Yes,
the
exactly.
solopreneur and your mill spouse, wonderful partners.
Exactly. Like I remember we had a client who said, now because of my freedom maker, I can swim in the mornings.
Ah,
And that was a big deal for her, right? So, some clients want to grow their business, so they're trying to grow their team. Some clients want more work-life balance, and they're getting that by having a
yeah.
freedom maker. I think too, on the freedom maker side, where they have agency in their lives, like, especially if they have young kids and they're having to manage the house on their own because of the service members' commitments, deployment schedules or whatnot, then to be able to, they might have 5 to 20 hours a week that they can do for themselves. And
Hmm.
helping a solopreneur run their business is something that the spouse can do for themselves that also contributes to their family, right? And so
Yeah.
I think for them, that having something on their own gives them that agency that can be lost as a military spouse.
100%. Well, I look forward to following up with you at a later date, because I just had an idea for our business and how we might be able to engage a freedom maker. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. Um, So what's an and I know we're going long. Like I said, I've got to learn how to make these shorter. But what happens is I talk to you military community founders, and I love championing and celebrating you. I get too excited. But what's an opportunity or obstacle that you guys have overcome in Freedom Makers that you think would other people in the community would benefit from hearing and learning about?
Well, I originally was going to say our whole business model, how we came up with it, but but I think actually I could still share about that. So when I remember once I said, prior to starting Freedom Makers, I said to a mentor, I only want to run a business where I don't have any, like it's just me. I want to be a solopreneur. And I was convinced of that. And that's what I knew I wanted. And she said, that's great. Don't hold yourself to it. You might change your mind. And 2 years later, I started Freedom Makers, right? So I think that was one thing, is just being open. Um, it's nice to have a clear vision, but being open to adjust fire is important too. And I remember when I came up with the idea of Freedom Makers, I had one employee at the time. She was a veteran. And I asked her if she would be willing to be the assistant, the virtual assistant. And luckily, she was transparent with me. And she said she didn't think she could handle the bouncing between clients throughout the day. And then I asked my sister-in-law if she would want to be the assistant, since she was the inspiration behind the business. And she's very much a creative. She has an MFA in poetry, and she was a freelance writer. And so she's like, yeah, I'm not really interested in doing admin support. So I appreciate that transparency. And that led me to post on a forum for, it was a mentoring forum for military spouses. And I posted, this is what I'm looking for. And I remember I got maybe 5 or 6 spouses who were interested. The first one is now our operations manager.
Oh,
And,
wow.
But that shifted our model completely before I even had a vision of what the model would be. I think if that employee or if my sister-in-law had said yes, we might be, a 3-person team with 10 clients kind of thing, right? But instead we became more of a matching service and supporting the relationships versus being delivering the service ourselves kind of thing. And so that was an opportunity that I don't think I realized was an opportunity at the time. I was just trying to find spouses, but that
Yeah.
really shifted our model to what it could have been, to what it is now. And
Hmm.
um, and going back to that trust factor, like these were strangers that, I, of those 4 or 5, Aaron is the only one I've ever met in person. And we didn't meet until,
Wow.
I think the first time we met in person was 2021. And she joined as our first Freedom Maker in 2015. So going back to trust, like these were people I did not know,
Right.
and, built an entire business around supporting them and relying on them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Very cool. How did you learn to become I'll call it a coachable CEO, coachable founder? Um, I, I see a high correlation between people that are coachable and willing to adapt like you did, the pivot or whatever we want to call it. How did you learn to become a coachable CEO?
I think I've just always enjoyed learning, and um, it helps when you feel like you don't know anything. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember I went to a career coach in business school, and she said, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a CEO. I just felt like I like doing a little bit of everything. And she just kind of looked at me like, I think the conversation ended right there. Like,
Yeah.
how do you get a job as a CEO straight out of business school in the
Uh-huh.
military, right? And I remember too, I think it was right after business school, I was applying to general manager positions because I didn't understand that was a leadership position. I thought that meant just a manager in general.
Okay, that's cute. That's really good.
Right. And
Yeah.
and and the descriptions would be like, you're touching all these different departments. I'm like, that seems really interesting. So um I think probably it just had to do with I literally knew nothing about leading business. Obviously, coming out of the military, you do learn about leadership, and even if you don't know that you've learned about it. And but I knew nothing about business. And so when you come at it from that perspective, then you're like a sponge and you're just soaking up everything that you can get your hands on.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, I know your time is precious and we're coming towards the end, but thank you. What's something that excites you going forward with your business, or something that's new that you're looking forward to, that has you excited today that you're working on?
I think that you might appreciate this with your business. Small business finance is something I feel like you can't learn in a book. You have to learn by going through it. And because I feel like it seems easy, you just take your sales and minus your expenses, and that's your profit, right? But it is
Sorry.
so much more difficult than that in real life. And that is what I'm currently learning. I remember the first couple of years in business, I was struggling with a cash flow thing. And I remember telling my accountability partner, I, this is going to be fun once I've learned how to get through it.
Yeah.
Right? Like it sucks right now, but once I figure this out, it's going to be a great case study and it's going to be a great learning lesson. And I'm feeling that way right now about finance in general. Because we're getting to the size where just looking at your bank account isn't good enough, right? Like when you're small enough, you can figure it out just by looking at your bank account. And so that's what I'm excited about is once we figure that out, then we know how much we can safely invest, how much we can in the growth of the company. We'll know how much we can afford to hire our next team member, or when we can afford that. And that's exciting to me to get to that point, to be able to figure that out.
Absolutely. Well, let's just say that I did not pay you to ask that question. What's really funny is what we found is that every founder wants to be what we call now a ready founder, that they're ready for every obstacle and every opportunity. And they can't do that unless they have financial clarity and confidence around their numbers, and they understand what's coming down the pike. And once we help those men and women see that clearly and be able to make those choices, it really, I'm going to say it, gives them much more freedom and understanding.
Yes.
So yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. It's almost like a roadmap. It's like
We call it the financial clarity roadmap. So that's funny. Yeah.
A few years ago, I was telling my team, it's like we're all crossing a field together and there's no path, but we can see each other. So we know we're roughly going in the right direction. But if we can define a path, then we're just going to get there so much faster. And that's what helped us. That's when we were trying to figure out what our KPIs were and how to measure that, right? And so now we have that. And then now we're working on that financial clarity to make that path even clearer, even wider, right? So
wow, that is very true. You just gave me an ad right there. I can do just this conversation. Hey, so before we go, and thank you so much for your time and your insights today. It is truly, I'll say, the master class every time I talk to another military community founder. But what's just a couple quick questions. What are some resources you find helpful? Blogs, podcasts, personalities, books, whatever the case may be, that you say you got to read this book. What would that be? What would those be?
Yeah, so probably my favorite leadership book is Extreme Ownership. And my latest Jocko Willink finance book is Simple Numbers, Big Profit, Straight Talk, something like that. The order might be different, but by Greg Crabtree.
Yep, understood. So who's that inspiring military community founder for you? Who's an inspiring military community founder that you know of? And
yeah, I think we both know him. It's Scott Mackes. He the founder of 10X Vets. We connected almost 10 years ago, and back when he was doing the Service Academy Business Mastermind, and I attended one of the events, and afterward somehow we were on the phone talking about ideas. And that's what I've always admired about him, is he's very open with his experiments, and he'll call people and be like, hey, this is an idea I have. What do you think about it? And then he'll try it. And that's been his openness has always been inspiring to me, and just how he's willing to get feedback from other business owners on ideas that he wants to try. And then he'll go and try it and see what
Yep.
happens. And so watching his um, business transform over the last few years as he tries different ideas has been really inspiring.
Yeah, that's true. I'm a 10X member currently, so that's funny you mentioned Scott. That's for sure. So, well, thank you. What's one question, if there's any, that I haven't asked you yet that you think, why hasn't Rod asked me about?
I don't know if I have any. I think we've covered a lot of
Yes,
topics.
we have. So, well, thank you so much. And as a small token of gratitude, we're going to donate $100 in your name to the Dick Logis Scholarship Fund.
Thank
And
you.
we just awarded one to a young man named Cole, and we'll do it again next year, maybe even two scholarships each for $2,500 this coming year. So that's
I
our way
love
of
it.
saying thank you. Appreciate your time very much. That's for sure. So
Thank
all
you.
right. Well, thank you, Laura. Oh, good.
Oh, I did think of the question you haven't asked.
Okay,
How people can find us.
that's right. That's right. Sorry. How can they find you, Laura? That's right.
Our website is www.freedom-makers.com. And that's the best place. You can schedule a call with us if you want to know more, or see us at any of our upcoming events on the site.
Fantastic. We appreciate it, Laura. Thanks for joining us on the MilCom Founders Podcast. If you know a MilCom founder with a story to share, reach out to us at milcomfounders.com. For each guest on our show, One Degree Financial donates $100 to the Dick Logis Veteran Entrepreneur Scholarship Fund, supporting education for children of a MilCom business owner. Stay ready.